The challenge begins. The arena on Renthis 9 was alive with the roar of thousands. A mix of alien species filled the stands, their eyes glowing in excitement. This was no ordinary tournament. It was the Galactic Combat Trials, the most brutal fighting competition in the universe. Warriors from different planets came here to prove their strength, their speed, their power. Only the best survived. Among them stood Captain Derek Hale, the only human in the tournament. Derek adjusted his gloves, his calm blue eyes scanning the massive circular arena. The floor was cracked and stained with the marks of countless battles. He could feel the stares, the whispers, the amusement from the crowd. A deep, growling voice echoed through the air. Next match, Derek Hale, human soldier, versus Velora of the Vecthar Empire. The crowd erupted in excitement. The Vecthar were known across the galaxy for their lightning-fast speed and deadly combat skills. They were warriors bred for battle, their 4 muscular arms giving them an unfair advantage in close combat. Derek sighed. He already knew what was coming. Across the arena, a tall, armored figure stepped forward. Velora. She was nearly 7 feet tall, her emerald green skin gleaming under the bright arena lights. Her golden battle armor reflected the energy barriers around the arena. She had 4 arms, sharp fangs, and a reputation for ending fights in seconds. She looked at Derek and laughed. A human. Velora's voice was filled with amusement. They send a slow, weak human to fight me. This will be over before it begins. The crowd laughed with her. They had seen humans before, traders, diplomats, explorers, but never warriors. Derek didn't react. He simply rolled his shoulders, his expression blank. He had heard it all before. The referee, a floating metallic drone, hovered above them. Its robotic voice echoed. Combatants ready. Fight. Velora moved first. She exploded forward, faster than the human eye could track. 1 second she was across the arena. The next she was right in front of Derek, all 4 arms swinging at his head, chest, and ribs in a blur of deadly strikes. The crowd roared. This was it. This was how it always ended. But Derek didn't move. At the last possible moment, he leaned back, just an inch. Velora's first punch missed by a breath. Her second, third, and fourth cut through empty air. The laughter in the crowd died. Velora's eyes narrowed. Her speed was legendary, but this human had dodged every attack without even trying. She snarled and attacked again, moving even faster. Blades flashed. Fists swung. She aimed for his throat, his ribs, his legs. But Derek weaved between her strikes, his body moving with a calm precision that shouldn't be possible. For the first time in her life, Velora missed. She growled, frustration building. You can't dodge forever, human. Derek finally moved. His left foot slid forward. His right hand came up. Before Velora could react, she was on the ground. The crowd gasped. No one saw what happened. One moment she was attacking. The next, she was flat on her back, gasping for breath, Derek's knee pressing into her chest. His voice was calm. Speed isn't about how fast you move. Velora struggled, her 4 powerful arms trying to push him off, but she couldn't move. Derek leaned closer, whispering, It's about how fast you think. The entire arena was silent. The referee drone buzzed. Winner, Derek Hale. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't know how to react. A human had just taken down one of the fastest warriors in the galaxy, in seconds. Somewhere in the crowd, hidden in the shadows, a figure watched with keen interest. His black eyes narrowed. This is unexpected. The tournament was no longer just a fight. It was something bigger. And now, Derek Hale had everyone's attention. A speed no one expected. The silence in the arena was deafening. Thousands of alien spectators stared in disbelief at the sight before them. The once mighty Velora, a warrior of the Vecthar Empire, lay flat on the ground, her forearms twitching as she struggled to comprehend what had just happened. And standing over her, completely untouched, was a human. Derek Hale didn't celebrate. He didn't raise his fists or cheer like most fighters would. Instead, he simply stepped back, letting Velora push herself up. She was breathing heavily, her pride clearly shattered. Her golden eyes narrowed. "What are you?" Derek met her gaze, his face unreadable. "Just a soldier." The crowd erupted into whispers. Just a soldier. That was impossible. The shocked spectators. In the VIP stands above the arena, alien warlords, generals, and crime bosses watched with growing interest. They had come here expecting a slaughter, expecting the human to be a joke. But this was something else. An old reptilian warlord, General Tolvek, let out a low chuckle. His scaly lips curled in amusement. "I have seen many fights in my lifetime, but this is something new." Beside him, a cloaked figure remained silent. His black eyes glowed faintly beneath his hood, his mind already working through the implications. Humans were supposed to be slow, weak, inferior. Yet, in a few effortless moves, Derek had humiliated one of the fastest warriors in the galaxy. And that meant one thing. Humans were a threat. Velora's second mistake. Back in the arena, Velora wiped the sweat from her brow. The shock had faded. Now it was replaced by rage. Her entire species prided itself on speed and strength. She had fought hundreds of opponents, never lost to a single one. And now a human had beaten her in seconds. She growled. That was a fluke. Derek simply tilted his head. Was it? Velora's fists clenched. The crowd wanted blood. The shame was too much. She had to prove herself. With a roar, she lunged forward again. Faster, stronger, fury in every movement. Derek sighed. The world slowed down. To the audience, Velora was a blur, her forearms moving so fast that the air around her shimmered. To Derek, it was slow motion. He saw everything. Every shift in her muscles, every twitch of her fingers before she struck, every mistake. Derek didn't move backward. He moved forward, the end in an instant. Velora's first punch came at his face. Derek's head tilted to the side, avoiding it by a hair's width. Her second fist aimed for his ribs. Derek angled his body, letting it glide past him harmlessly. Her third and fourth punches came at the same time, one high, one low, designed to be impossible to dodge. Derek caught one arm mid-air and twisted. Velora gasped as her own momentum was used against her. Her entire body flipped, her head hitting the ground with a heavy thud. The crowd froze. She wasn't just beaten. She was dominated. The unthinkable realization. Velora groaned, struggling to rise. How? No one had ever countered her speed. No one had ever even reacted in time. But Derek? He hadn't just reacted. He had been faster than her. Derek crouched beside her, speaking in a voice only she could hear. You fight like an animal. Velora's eyes widened. What? You rely on instinct, speed, strength. Your body moves faster than your brain. Asterisk asterisk. Derek's tone was calm asterisk asterisk. But speed doesn't win fights. Control does. Velora gritted her teeth. You're lying. No species thinks that fast. Derek smirked. Humans do. And for the first time in her life, Velora felt fear. The hidden observer. Up in the shadows of the VIP stands, a figure watched with quiet intensity. His black, pupilless eyes locked onto Derek. He had studied humans before. He had read their history, watched their wars. But this human, this one was different. A voice crackled in his ear. Commander Ralvek, what do you think? Ralvek didn't answer right away. His mind was racing. If one human could move like this, then what if there were others? His fingers tightened around the hilt of his plasma dagger. We might have underestimated them. The voice on the other end hesitated. Orders. Ralvek watched as Derek walked away, leaving Valora stunned in the dirt. His lips curled into a smirk. Watch him. If he wins another fight, eliminate him. The science behind his speed. The fight should have been forgotten by now. The galactic combat trials had seen warriors of immense power, beasts capable of bending steel, cyborgs with laser reflexes, and creatures that could move faster than the eye could track. But one human had broken the pattern, and now the entire tournament was watching him. The backlash. Derek Hale sat on the metal bench in his private waiting room. His hands were steady as he wrapped a fresh layer of bandages around his wrists. His breathing was slow, controlled. Outside, the arena was still buzzing with noise. Spectators, fighters, gamblers, all trying to make sense of what had happened. The door slid open. A young human officer stepped inside. Lieutenant Ryan Carter, one of the few human recruits in the Galactic Alliance. He looked shaken. "You made the headlines," Carter muttered, tossing a holographic datapad onto the table. Derek glanced at it. A dozen alien news streams played at once. Human outmatches Vecthar Elite. Impossible. Derek Hale. Freak or threat. Is humanity hiding something? Derek smirked and put the pad down. They're acting like it's magic. Carter's voice was quiet. They're scared. Derek stretched his arms, rolling his shoulders. They should be. Carter swallowed hard. Do you even understand what you just did? The Vecthar are a species built for combat. They have natural reflexes, genetic enhancements, centuries of battle experience. And you just humiliated one of their best. Derek finally looked at him, his expression calm. I didn't beat her with strength. I beat her with time. Carter frowned. What does that even mean? Derek leaned forward. Speed isn't about muscles. It's not about reflexes. It's about processing information. He tapped his temple. The human brain is the greatest weapon in the galaxy. The science of human speed. Other species are faster, sure, Derek explained. Their bodies move like lightning. Their muscles react without thinking. But that's their weakness. Carter raised an eyebrow. How is speed a weakness? Because they move before they think. Derek stood up and began pacing. Most alien species are biologically programmed for combat. They fight on instinct, relying on pre-trained responses, genetic memory, and raw speed. But humans? We adapt. He turned back to Carter. You ever hear about the 0.25-second rule? Carter blinked. What? The average human reaction time is 0.25 seconds, Derek said. We're slower than most species, but here's the trick. We don't just react. We predict. He grabbed a small combat knife from his locker. He flipped it in his hand, watching the blade glint under the dim light. While an alien warrior relies on instinct, we're calculating trajectories, analyzing movement, anticipating the next 5 steps. Carter frowned. So, you're saying you think faster than them? Derek smirked. Not just think. I see the fight before it happens. Carter exhaled. No wonder they're scared of you. Derek sat back down, his expression turning serious. They should be. Because I'm not the strongest human. I'm just the first one they've seen fight. The shadow watching him. Unbeknownst to them, someone else was listening. High above the training chambers, in a dark, secured viewing room, Commander Ralvek stood before a holographic screen, watching the footage of Derek's fight on repeat, frame by frame. He slowed the video to 1% speed. Even at this near-frozen speed, Derek moved in ways that should have been impossible. Ralvek narrowed his eyes. Play it again, he ordered. A robotic AI voice responded. Commander, this is the 12th time. Play it again. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The screen flickered, restarting the fight. Ralvek watched, studying every detail, every movement. This wasn't luck. This wasn't natural. This was something far worse. Behind him, An armored soldier shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, should we move forward with the kill order?" Relvek didn't answer immediately. He watched as Derek dodged Valora's fastest attack with a movement so small, so precise, that it barely looked real. Finally, he exhaled. "Not yet." The soldier frowned. "Sir." Relvek turned away from the screen, his dark eyes sharp. "Killing him now would be wasteful. We need to test him first." The soldier hesitated. "Test him? How?" Relvek smiled coldly. "By giving him an opponent he cannot outthink." The next fight. Kronex, the war beast. A few hours later, Derek stood in the center of the arena once more. The crowd was louder than ever, not in cheers, but in whispers, speculation, fear. Derek didn't care. He simply waited. Then the arena shook. A heavy metal gate opened, releasing something that made even the boldest warriors go silent. A creature of steel and flesh stepped forward. Kronex. Half war beast, half cybernetic monster, Kronex was an unstoppable predator. It stood nearly 10 feet tall, with armored plating, glowing red sensors for eyes, and a body enhanced with adaptive AI. Kronex was built for one purpose only: to hunt, analyze, and eliminate anything it fought. Derek cracked his knuckles. "So this is the test." The referee drone floated overhead. "Begin." The battle against the war beast. The arena was alive with a sense of foreboding. The crowd, once raucous and excited, now watched with a deadly silence as Kronex stepped forward. Every movement of the cybernetic war beast sent ripples of tension through the air. Derek stood still in the center, his eyes locked on the hulking creature that was now his opponent. Kronex's red eyes glowed with an eerie light, scanning Derek with the precision of an advanced AI. Its 4 mechanical arms were lined with razor-sharp claws, and its massive armored legs had been designed to crush anything in its path. The fight would not be easy. Kronex, the perfect predator. Kronex wasn't just a warrior, it was a weapon. Designed for battle, it had been built with cutting-edge technology, blending the raw power of a beast with the cold efficiency of machinery. Its cybernetic enhancements allowed it to calculate movements in fractions of a second. It was faster, stronger, and more precise than any organic creature could ever be. But Derek wasn't like the others. As Kronex took its first step toward him, Derek felt something he hadn't experienced before: a feeling of doubt. For the first time, his human brain struggled to predict the next move. Kronex didn't fight like Valora or any other alien he had encountered. Its movements were not instinctual, they were calculated. Every motion was precise, built for maximum efficiency. There was no room for improvisation, no weakness to exploit. And yet Derek wasn't afraid. He simply watched, waiting for the right moment. The first strike. Kronex lunged, its massive form closing the distance in an instant. Derek didn't have time to think. He had to react. The war beast's claws swiped at him, moving faster than any creature he had ever faced. In a split second, Derek dove to the side, feeling the rush of wind as the claws narrowly missed him. The crowd gasped in shock. Kronex was supposed to be unstoppable, and yet the human had dodged its first strike. But Derek wasn't out of danger yet. Kronex, like a predator, adjusted instantly, shifting its stance with unnatural speed. It was already calculating its next move, its mechanical eyes locked onto Derek, tracking his every movement. This wasn't a fight at speed, it was a fight of reaction time. Derek knew he had to be faster. He had to anticipate not just Kronex's movements, but the way its AI thought. This was not a beast, it was a machine with a mind. The dance of mind and machine. As Kronex swung again, Derek didn't try to dodge. Instead, he closed the distance, his body moving like a blur. With a sudden, precise pivot, he used the war beast's own momentum against it, stepping under its massive arm and twisting with incredible force. For a brief moment, Derek had the advantage. But Kronex wasn't done. It reacted instantly, compensating for the shift in weight. its AI recalculating the trajectory of its attack before Derek could even process it. With a mechanical hiss, it spun around, swinging its other arm down in a powerful arc. Derek barely managed to dive out of the way, the strike hitting the ground with a thunderous crash. The arena floor shook under the sheer impact. This was different. In every fight he had faced, human instinct and creativity had always been his advantage. But against Kronex, there was no room for unpredictability. The war beast was an unfeeling machine, calculating every possible movement and adapting faster than Derek could respond. The struggle. Derek's mind raced. His muscles burned from the constant dodging, but his thoughts were clear. He had to think faster. But how? Then it hit him. Kronex didn't just analyze its own movements. It was also tracking his reactions. Every move he made was feeding data back to the AI, giving it the information it needed to adjust. Derek wasn't just fighting the machine. He was teaching it how to counter him. It was time to change tactics. A new strategy. Derek paused, standing still for a moment, letting Kronex take the lead. He didn't try to dodge, didn't attempt to outsmart it. He let Kronex attack. Kronex charge, its four massive arms swinging at Derek. But this time, he didn't react immediately. Instead, he waited, watching the war beast's every move. As the claws came down toward him, Derek didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped into the strike, just out of reach, and with a quick motion, he ducked underneath its arm. This time, Derek wasn't trying to avoid Kronex's attacks. He was reading the machine's movements, studying the way it compensated. And then, with a sudden burst of speed, he struck. In one fluid motion, Derek slid behind Kronex and delivered a swift blow to the back of its exposed mechanical leg. The sound of metal crunching echoed across the arena. The crowd gasped. Derek had damaged the war beast. Kronex's counterattack. Kronex screeched, its red eyes flashing with anger. The AI had detected the damage and immediately began recalculating its response. The war beast's speed increased, its attacks coming faster, more relentlessly than before. It was adapting to Derek's unpredictability, learning his movements as it went. But Derek had one more trick up his sleeve. The final move. Derek took a deep breath. He could feel the pressure mounting. His body was tired, and he could see the war beast was getting smarter with every passing second. The next few moments would decide the fight. Kronex made its move, faster than before. Its claws raked across the arena floor, aiming for Derek's chest. But this time, he didn't dodge. Derek let the strike come. As the claws sliced through the air, he timed his move perfectly. With a sudden roll, he slipped beneath Kronex's claws and got to the war beast's exposed side. In a single motion, Derek grabbed a small exposed panel on Kronex's side and ripped it open. Sparks flew as he jammed his fist into the circuitry, disrupting the AI's control systems. The war beast let out a mechanical roar, its movements slowing as the AI began to fail. It staggered, its claws now swiping in random patterns. And that's when Derek saw his opening. With a final burst of speed, he ran up its massive leg, climbing to its back. Kronex swung wildly, but Derek didn't stop. With one last strike, he jammed his knife into the war beast's core, the vital circuits sparking as its system shut down. The beast fell. The hidden threat. The arena was still. The fight between Derek Hale and Kronex, the cybernetic war beast, was over. But the silence in the stadium felt like the calm before a storm. Derek stood tall, his chest rising and falling with each breath, his body still humming with the adrenaline of battle. His mind, however, was focused on something else. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had just crossed a line. Kronex had been no ordinary opponent. It was designed for one thing: to be unstoppable. But Derek had managed to outwit it, destroying its control systems and defeating the war beast in a matter of moments. The crowd was stunned into silence, as if they couldn't comprehend what had just happened. For the first time in the tournament's history, A human had defeated a creature that no one believed could be defeated. Derek's victory wasn't just impressive, it was unnerving. And it wasn't just the spectators that were noticing. A dangerous watcher, high above the arena, in a dark, secure room filled with advanced technology and monitoring systems, a pair of black, glowing eyes watched Derek carefully. This figure, Commander Relvek, had been observing the tournament from the shadows, and what he saw was unsettling. He wasn't just witnessing a human soldier beating impossible odds. He was seeing the beginning of something much bigger. Relvek had heard of humans before. He had read the data, seen their history. They were primitive, yes, but they had survived wars, disease, and extinction-level events. They were resilient, stubborn, and resourceful. But Relvek had always dismissed them as insignificant. Now, he wasn't so sure. With a wave of his hand, he activated the communication system, speaking in a voice that was cold and calculated. "Prepare the team," he ordered. "I want Derek Hale eliminated. Now." A deep voice crackled through the speakers. "Understood, Commander. Orders will be carried out immediately." Relvek's lips curled into a thin smile as he turned back to the screen. "You're more than just a soldier, human. You're a threat." Derek's restless night. The night after the battle felt heavier than most. Derek had barely made it back to his quarters when he felt the familiar weight of unease settle over him. He'd won, yes, but the victory had felt too easy. Something wasn't right. His mind raced as he cleaned his equipment, methodically checking each piece of his armor. Despite his calm exterior, his senses were on edge. His body hummed with the after effects of the fight, but there was something in the air, a sense that things were about to shift. Just as he was finishing up, there was a sudden knock on the door. "Come in." The door slid open, and in stepped Lieutenant Carter, his face more serious than usual. "Sir, we need to talk." Derek didn't say anything, but gestured for Carter to sit. His mind was already thinking ahead. Something had happened, and he could feel it coming. "What's going on?" Derek asked, not even bothering to hide the tension in his voice. Carter hesitated before responding. "I've been hearing rumors. They're saying your win against Kronix wasn't just a fluke." Derek narrowed his eyes. "Rumors? What kind of rumors?" "They're saying that someone is watching you. Someone powerful. And I'm not talking about the tournament officials." Carter's voice dropped lower. "I think there's more to this tournament than just a game." Derek's heart skipped a beat. He had suspected something was off ever since his first fight, but hearing Carter confirm his suspicions only made the weight of the situation heavier. "Who is it?" Derek asked, his voice growing serious. Carter hesitated again. "I don't know exactly, but I've heard a name. Relvek." Derek's eyes flashed with recognition. He knew the name. Relvek was no mere warrior. He was legendary, a leader of elite forces, and a hunter of dangerous individuals. If Relvek had taken interest in Derek, then things had just gotten much more complicated. The plot unfolds. While Derek and Carter discussed the implications of Relvek's involvement, another, more sinister figure was already on the move. In a dimly lit underground facility, a team of elite mercenaries prepared for the mission ahead. They were humans, veterans who had been trained for one thing: assassination. Their target, Derek Hale. The leader of the mercenaries, a woman named Lyra, was already suited up, her dark eyes scanning the holographic map of the arena. Her voice was calm, detached, as she spoke to her team. "Target is human soldier named Derek Hale. Primary objective is elimination. Secondary objective: ensure no evidence remains." A soldier raised his hand. "We've seen his fights. He's a good fighter, but nothing special." Lyra turned, locking eyes with him. "You've seen what he's done to Kronix. He's more than just a fighter. He's the future, and we can't let him become it." An unexpected encounter. Derek's night, however, was about to take an unexpected turn. As he was walking through the narrow corridors of the facility, a familiar flicker of movement caught his eye. Someone was waiting for him at the end of the hall. It was a figure dressed in black armor, their face obscured by a helmet. Derek's instincts kicked in. His hand instantly went to his sidearm, ready for anything. But before he could draw, the figure spoke in a low, grating voice. "You don't know who I am, but you will soon." Derek didn't lower his weapon. "I don't know who you are, but I sure as hell know you're not supposed to be here." The figure chuckled darkly. "You've made some noise, human. And now, you've caught the attention of the wrong people." Derek tensed. He knew exactly who this was, someone who had been sent to silence him. But before he could react, the figure disappeared into the shadows with a speed that was almost inhuman. The ultimate match. The days that followed the confrontation in the hallway were filled with tension. Derek couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. His enemies, those who watched him, were closer now than ever before. The once bustling corridors of the Galactic Combat Trials arena now seemed unnervingly quiet. Whispers filled the air, and rumors of the human soldier who had defeated Kronex, the perfect war beast, spread like wildfire across the complex. But it wasn't just the spectators who were talking. It was the higher-ups, the ones with power, the ones who had their own agenda. Derek knew they were watching him, analyzing every move. A new opponent. Derek sat alone in his quarters, contemplating his next move. Lieutenant Carter had warned him that the forces after him were getting more dangerous. And the news was true. The shadows were closing in, and the pressure was mounting. The door slid open with a soft hiss, breaking his focus. "Captain Hale," the voice boomed. It wasn't Carter. Derek looked up and saw a figure standing in the doorway. His presence alone filled the room. The heavy metallic footsteps of this new challenger reverberated across the floor, and a deep, almost unnatural calm settled over the space. It was Ralvek. Derek's eyes narrowed as the commander of the elite stepped forward. He wasn't just any officer. He was a living weapon, a shadow of fear cast across the galaxy. His every movement was deliberate, calculated. He had the air of someone who had never known defeat. "You've done well to get this far, human." Ralvek's voice was calm, but it carried a certain weight, a sense of finality. Derek stood up slowly, sizing up his opponent. This wasn't just another tournament match. This was a test, a reckoning. "And I've noticed," Ralvek continued, "you're not like the others." His sharp eyes scanned Derek, analyzing him. "You think." Derek grinned. "I don't just think, Commander. I act." Ralvek's lips twitched in a barely perceptible smirk. "Very well, human. It's time for you to prove yourself." He motioned to the door, and Derek felt the air grow even heavier. "This is not a match you will win, Captain Hale. This is your final test." The arena of fear. Derek followed Ralvek through the corridors, each step taking him deeper into a darkened zone of the arena he hadn't seen before. The walls seemed etched with centuries of battle scars, as though this place had witnessed the end of many warriors. As they neared the entrance to a new arena section, Derek could feel the heat rise. The space beyond was a large circular pit, surrounded by towering walls that seemed to swallow the sound. The roar of the crowd was muffled, as though the arena itself was closing in around him. In the center of the arena, a figure loomed. It wasn't human. It wasn't even something that could be considered alive in the traditional sense. The creature stood almost 12 feet tall, its body a grotesque mixture of sinewy muscles and robotic enhancements. The thing was a weapon made to destroy, with glowing red eyes and massive, clawed arms that could rip through steel. It was a cybernetic warlord, designed for combat at the highest level, a creature of destruction that had never been seen outside of top-secret military facilities. And it was Derek's next opponent. Ralvek's cold voice broke the silence. "Meet Zyros, the ultimate weapon in the galaxy. The perfect fusion of organic and machine. It is capable of predicting every movement, every attack. It is a predator that can learn." Derek took in the monstrous creature. Zyros didn't look at him. It didn't need to. It was already calculating, analyzing, and assessing his every move. The final battle begins. Begin. Ralvek's voice echoed as the ground beneath them shifted. Derek didn't wait for the creature to make the first move. He couldn't. He'd learned the hard way that hesitation meant death. As soon as the signal was given, he launched himself forward, darting across the arena with blinding speed. Zyros reacted almost instantly, its mechanical arms moving with eerie precision. As Derek advanced, the creature swung its right claw in a wide arc, aimed directly at Derek's chest. Derek ducked low, the claw missing by mere inches. His mind raced. This wasn't like Kronex. This wasn't about pure speed. This was a battle of wits. Zyros wasn't just fast, it was calculating. With every move Derek made, Zyros adapted, countering with a precision that no human should ever be able to keep up with. Every attack, every dodge was anticipated and met with a counter. It was unlike anything Derek had faced before. Derek stumbled, just barely avoiding a second swipe from Zyros' claws. He could feel the weight of the creature's power, its machine-enhanced strength. But Derek wasn't just fighting for survival, he was fighting for control. The mind game. Derek's body screamed for rest. His muscles burned, and his heart pounded, but he couldn't afford to lose focus. Zyros wasn't just another opponent. It was a mirror of everything Derek feared. It was perfect in ways that he, as a human, could never be. And yet there was one thing Zyros didn't have: creativity. As the creature charged again, Derek's mind raced, drawing on everything he'd learned about strategy, unpredictability, and human innovation. He knew Zyros was designed to learn, to predict every human move. But it could only do so much. It had no imagination. It didn't think outside the box. Derek's thoughts came to him in a flash of inspiration. He slammed his foot into the ground, using the force to propel himself upward, soaring over Zyros' head. As he passed over the beast's back, he pulled a small explosive charge from his belt and tossed it directly into the warlord's exposed power core. Boom! The explosion wasn't enough to completely disable the beast, but it did what Derek needed. It created a distraction. Zyros' movements slowed for a moment, its system recalculating, readjusting. And that was all Derek needed. The human advantage. With his opponent momentarily disoriented, Derek pressed the attack. He knew Zyros was vulnerable in one area, the exposed circuitry in its chest. If he could reach it, he could destroy the heart of the machine. He sprinted forward, dodging one final swipe of Zyros' claws, and launched himself directly at the creature's chest. With a fierce cry, he drove his knife into the power core, twisting it with all the strength he could muster. The creature screeched, its systems flashing red as it staggered back, struggling to maintain control. And then, with one final devastating strike, Zyros collapsed to the ground, its systems frying, its body twitching as it powered down for good. Humanity's greatest weapon. The arena stood silent. The dust from the fallen warlord Zyros hung thick in the air, the crowd completely stunned by the spectacle they had just witnessed. They had come to see warriors fight, but what they had witnessed was something beyond the realm of possibility. Derek Hale, battered and bruised but unbroken, stood in the center of the arena, chest heaving as his eyes scanned the still form of Zyros. The battle was over. The ultimate weapon, designed to be unstoppable, had been brought down by a human soldier. But as Derek caught his breath, the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Something in the air felt wrong, heavy, oppressive. He could sense it. He had felt it before, but this time it was sharper, more intense. The quiet was unnerving. And then, as if the arena itself could no longer contain the tension, a low voice boomed from the darkened corners of the stadium. "You've survived. For now." The voice of authority. Derek's hand instinctively went to the hilt of his weapon. His heart began to pound in his chest, but he didn't flinch. His eyes narrowed as the figure stepped from the shadows. It was Ralvek, standing tall and proud, his armored frame casting an imposing shadow over the arena floor. The cold glint of his dark eyes locked onto Derek. Derek had seen the commander from a distance before, but this moment felt different. This wasn't just a commander of some elite fighting force. This was the voice of galactic authority. Relvek's presence carried the weight of someone who had been in charge of deciding the fates of entire civilizations. And now, it seemed, Derek Hale's fate was about to be decided. Relvek's voice was low, laced with something more dangerous than mere coldness. It was the certainty of power. You have done the impossible. You've defeated what we thought was invincible. You've proved that a human can match the speed, the precision, and even the intellect of the galaxy's deadliest warriors. But I must ask you, Captain Hale, why? Derek's eyes remained locked with Relvek's, his mind racing. He had no idea what the commander wanted, but he understood one thing clearly: this wasn't over. Why not? Derek answered, his voice steady. I'm here to prove that we're more than just tools for the galaxy to discard. Relvek's lips curled into a faint, amused smile. So you fight because of pride? Because you wish to prove something? Derek stepped forward, his eyes never leaving Relvek's. No, he said, his voice hardening. I fight because I can. And I'll keep fighting until someone tells me I'm wrong. Relvek studied him for a long moment, a flicker of curiosity crossing his face. Then his expression hardened again, and he slowly raised a hand. Enough talk. We'll see just how much more you can endure. The shocking truth. Before Derek could respond, the ground shuddered beneath his feet. A rumble, soft at first, then growing louder, like an approaching storm. A series of mechanical doors along the edges of the arena began to rise, and the faint sound of heavy machinery echoed throughout the arena. Derek instinctively tensed. He knew that feeling. He'd felt it before when something big was coming. And this wasn't just any opponent. The ground trembled as several massive figures began to emerge from the depths of the arena. Derek's eyes widened in disbelief. They weren't just machines. They were more Zyros. Only this time they were bigger, more powerful, and better equipped. This is your final test, Relvek declared. His voice was cold, final. The galaxy needs to know what happens when a human challenges the order of the universe. We need to test your true limits. These machines are the perfect combatants. Fight them. And if you survive, you might just live long enough to understand your place in this galaxy. Derek took a step back, his heart beating faster. I'm not here to understand anything, he muttered under his breath. He was here to win. He had to keep fighting. The first of the war machines stepped forward. A Zyros unit that was almost double the size of the one he had fought earlier. The armor that covered its body was thicker, the weapons it carried even more dangerous. As it lumbered into the arena, its glowing red eyes locked onto Derek. Its limbs were massive, and its weapons, vibrating plasma blades, screeched as they charged to full power. Derek clenched his fists. He could feel his body already protesting from the previous fight, but he wasn't going to stop now. Let's do this, he charged forward. The war begins again. The war machine advanced faster than Derek expected, the vibration of its movements making the ground tremble beneath his feet. He dodged the first swipe, feeling the air shift as the massive arm passed inches from his body. The speed of the attack shocked him. This wasn't like fighting Zyros. These were upgraded versions of what he had already faced. Derek was forced to keep moving, his feet slipping on the slick, battle-worn surface of the arena as he sprinted around the monster. His brain worked in overdrive, calculating, predicting, analyzing. He saw the next swipe coming before it even happened, but the machines were learning, adapting to his moves. As Derek lunged forward to strike, he felt something different. He was slower. The pain from his earlier battles was beginning to take its toll. His muscles burned. His reflexes weren't as sharp as they had been in the previous fights. The Zyros unit countered quickly, grabbing Derek by the wrist and throwing him to the ground. The impact rattled his bones. He pushed himself up with a groan, sweat trickling down his forehead. But before he could recover, another Zyros unit entered the fray, its plasma blades humming as it slashed toward him. Derek barely managed to roll out of the way, but the force of the attack sent him skidding across the arena. He could feel his strength waning. His body screamed for relief, but he refused to stop. The final stand. Derek stood, barely able to catch his breath, sweat dripping from his face. The machines were relentless, but his human spirit had never been more alive. The stakes had never been higher. Derek wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for humanity. He was fighting for the future of every human that had ever been dismissed as weak or insignificant. He wasn't just a soldier. He was a symbol of everything that humanity had ever stood for. "Come on," he shouted as he sprinted toward the nearest machine, dodging its massive claws with a burst of adrenaline. This wasn't just about power, it was about heart. As Derek launched himself at the machine, he felt a surge of energy. He reached for the plasma core at the center of its chest, jamming a charge deep inside. The machine faltered, sparks flying as it began to malfunction. With a final twist, Derek activated the charge, and the machine exploded, taking out the other with it. The arena went silent. Derek had won. The future of humanity. Derek stood tall, panting, bloodied, but victorious. He had faced the ultimate test and had triumphed. He was no longer just a soldier. He was a force of nature, a symbol of everything humanity had to offer. Ralvek's eyes narrowed in admiration, or was it fear? Whatever it was, he knew one thing for certain. Humanity had proven itself in a way no one had ever imagined. "You are more than I expected, human," Ralvek said softly. "The galaxy will be watching you." Derek's lips twitched. Let them watch. The war had only just begun.